Bandwidth for First Updates Now is supported by the Blue Alliance. Keep up to date on all live and archived First Robotics events and team stats at thebluealliance.com. First Updates Now is brought to you by Twitch. Fun is now a Twitch partner and offering some awesome subscriber-only benefits. Subscribe today or get a free subscription each month when you have Amazon Prime by linking your account and clicking subscribe. Coming up on First Updates Now recap, Paul Copioli, the man himself, is here to talk Texas districts and how it could impact others around FRC. We'll dive deep into Paul's history into VEX first and also talk about his current team's amazing world finalist season. Also, 8-bit team avatars are coming and more. All this on First Updates Now. Reporting for it, I'm Tyler Olds.
I'm Justin Montois.
I'm Mike Starke.
And I'm Christina Tia, and our producer for the show today is Nik Olsen.
Are you sure that's not Justin speaking?
Wow, I knew
this is gone.
I know.
Christine, it is so great to have you back again, and I have not done a show with you in several months now. So that's
hey, Mike, can you turn up your mic, buddy?
Sure. So what can we expect from you today, Christine?
I'll jump in if you want, Christine.
Gonna save her voice.
Yeah, I'll save her voice a little bit. So Christine has on the screen, she is drawing the Bolt 148 robot that Nik actually is going to pop on the screen right here. If you haven't seen it so far, it had an incredible run this past weekend, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And great gears, and going to be giving that away. If you're interested in getting this drawing, we'll have digital downloads available. Be giving away a couple of those for free this evening, so stick around near the end of the show. Make sure you click that follow button, or for 5 times better chance, hit that subscribe. Give us a few bucks a month. We appreciate it, and you can also subscribe for free through Amazon Prime. Oh, and by the way, we love those of you who are watching on TBA or with a team watching right now. We know that a lot of teams are watching us all together. Hop in the chat, become part of the conversation, and have a great time.
Absolutely. And we're going to introduce our guest today. We're very excited to have Paul Copioli here. He is the president of VEX Robotics, a championship Woody Flowers Award winner from 2005 and current drive coach for Team 3310 Blackhawk Robotics, who are world finalists this past year. And he's just a long-time first veteran, a great guy. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm happy to be here.
All right, we're going to dive into Paul's story along with Texas districts coming up a little bit, but let's get right into our headlines here. If you have a question for Paul, by the way, we'll try to get to it near the end of the show. Go ahead and type your question and tag at First Updates Now.
So leading off tonight, our headlines about these new 8-bit avatars that are coming up for first power-up. Recently, FRC blog was written by FRC systems engineer Danny Diaz. He announced that for power-up teams will be able to create their own digital image or avatar that will be used to represent their teams on the audience display at the competition. The avatar will be displayed alongside their other information, like their team number and their team name for their alliance. So that's going to be pretty cool. So like the banners of 2016 and the standards of 2017, avatars will be optional, 40 by 40 pixels. And Paul, let's start with you. Is the avatar something you and your students can get excited about, and how does it compare to kind of some of the similar stuff that have been done in the past?
Our students we have a Slack channel for our team, 3310, and they're talking about like who's going to do it, what do we do? Do we just do our logo? Do we do a robot? Although I heard more interesting through the grapevine that a certain team out of Greenville, their avatar is just going to be all black. Literally just one
shocker.
Black. It'll be like the only high definition avatar there is.
I wonder who that could be.
I hope they do it. I think they're being bold, but they're bluffing, I think. We'll see.
I don't think so. I think they'll do it. So these will be like pre-match put up on the screen? Do they really? Is that what that means?
Yeah. So when they're showing like the rankings, like the match rankings, as far as I could tell, I believe that's what the audience display is. So I would think it'd be pre and post would be my best guess. I'm gonna say probably more pre than post, because usually post is just the scores.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think pre-match for sure. You'll see these. I thought
it'd be cool to have them next to like the 3 teams that are on there, or however they do their graphic at the bottom. I thought it'd be cool just since it's so tiny, but I think it's a cool idea. There's teams that do, there's teams that don't. I think there'll be other things we'll see them use more than just in the match. Like I know we have the Symbiotics one that we use for our thing, and I think we'll see them used more outside of gameplay than inside for random like buttons or pins, stuff like that. That's where I think we'll see it more.
I think everybody should do their shirts like with the 8-bit avatar as their like. So if we do our logo instead of doing like, you know, the high def all fancy schmancy logo, we should just do the 8-bit one because I think that'd be hilarious.
That'd be pretty cool.
Blue Alliance did that, I know, for their Facebook page so far, and I think we're going to see more. Paul, one of the things that you said that intrigued me a bit is when I hear about these things, I feel like I'm getting to be an old fart because to me it's neat, but it's not that exciting. But you just mentioned that your kids were talking about it, and that's something to me that speaks true to, you know, are these things impacting the students, and that's really who it's about, right, for these things. And if the kids are excited, then I'm on board with it. I think it's one of those things where I think it's an improvement, especially last year. It felt like a real cop-out with the standards. It's just a rehash of the banners, essentially. So I'm down for it. I think it's a new innovative thing, and I think it's just another thing to get people talking more and more about it. And one of the things that Nik has up on the screen here is he's showing the 1114 bot from 2014. Man, I'd love to see more of these. I think that'd be really cool to show.
Yeah, if that's how like teams kind of release what the robot's going to look like, you know, you first see like their 8-bit robot. That'd be cool too. Justin, anything else you want to add to that?
I'll just kind of echo what Tower and Paul had mentioned. You know, we have a Slack for our team as well, and once that blog post kind of went live, our students were already, you know, playing with different designs and different things. So I think, you know, to kind of echo what Tower said, I feel like we're kind of being the grumpy old men about these
right?
things sometimes. You know, I think you know, there are a few kids in our team that are really excited about it, so that's cool.
Cool. Awesome. So our next headline revolves around robot rebuilds and modifications. Last week, Team 148, the Robo Wranglers, unveiled a completely new robot for the Remix off-season event in Houston. X016, or now called Bolt, was adequately named as it might be the fastest robot we have seen compete on an FRC field. In Finals 1 of the Remix, Bolt scored 11 gears and had a 2-second climb. So now I want to hear kind of from everybody what their favorite robot rebuild or major modification has been. But before we do that, while you guys are thinking, we're going to bring on our producer, Nik Olsen, who is a mentor on 148, to let us know a little bit more about their rebuild robot, Bolt.
Yeah, it's great to be on. Usually I'm behind the screen here and no one ever sees me, but, you know, they occasionally uncage me.
They still don't see you. It's okay.
Yeah. So Bolt was primarily created by mostly students in CAD. It was pretty cool. We had Casey and Madison working on that pretty much throughout the summer. I'm just gonna say it the way I feel it was pretty cool to see them just go forward with it. The only constraints for it were really, hey, we want the best gear bot and it's got to be really fast. So we came up with this little 61-pound monstrosity that is pretty wicked. So
very cool. Well, thanks for coming on, Nik. It's nice to give you some spotlight there.
we let him come out of his den like once every 6 months. You know?
So, Nik, are you still there?
I'm still here.
I'm still here. So my question is, you know, having had a great robot during the competition season, then built Bolt, do you kind of wish that Bolt was more of the robot that maybe not 148 built, but more teams had built? You know, were you like ever sitting there watching this thing like, wow, this is what we should have done during the season?
There was the discussion of, hey, what would have happened during the season if we built this robot? And to be fair, like Rogue was pretty much a scaled up version of this robot. It's the same intake from Rogue and the same climber. The only thing we did was basically shrink down the chassis, made it about 100 pounds lighter. So
Caltrans said 61 pounds. Is that right?
61 pounds with bumper and battery.
That's awesome.
I think the Rogue was 127 with fully kitted out. But yeah, I definitely would have loved to see a lot more teams build this robot. I know there was one in Dallas. I think it was like 5431. They had a robot pretty similar to this, just a small ground pickup with a climber. It did fairly well too. So if you know, a lot of teams would have focused more on the gears, not so much the shooting aspect of it. You know, like 1-2 balls a second, like most teams did. I think we would have seen a lot higher scores a lot earlier in the season.
That's true. Fuel doesn't matter anyway. So,
hey,
Nik, can you real quick? Can you go to the end of the match? We're just showing the finals 1 match near the end. I just want to show this climb.
The climb is ludicrous.
Yeah, the climb is nuts. So let's get that up on the screen and check that out here.
Let me see if
this
I can
was
scrub to that quick.
Yeah.
What powers that climb, Nik? Do you know?
2775 pros.
Wow.
That's right.
So,
Just
like,
let it go,
there
and
we
we can
go.
kind
Here
of
we
talk,
go.
and you can see as it goes on.
It's-
So yeah, you'll see him place his last gear here, and that was gear number 11, by the way. And look at that, bam! I mean, did you guys even see
Wait,
that?
I missed
That was-
it. No,
yeah.
I missed it.
I mean, that's just incredible. They probably could have done a couple more gears if they needed to, but they didn't have to. So yeah, so kudos to you. Yeah, let's move on though. Paul, as you think about it, this is kind of one of those blast from the past things, right? So have you seen any big robot rebuilds or huge modifications to a robot over the season that have kind of really stood out to you at all?
Yeah, so I want to just talk a little bit about Rogue, or about Bolt. See,
Sure.
the 148. This is just another one of their, off season. It says X16. This is like the 16th, off season robot they did, and they use it to train their new members and their build practices. But they also use it to hone the skills of some of their more senior members on the team to do the CAD. And when Nick said like mostly CADed, by Casey and Madison, that it was 100% CADed by them. The only reason they can't say it was 100% done by them is because they took the intake from the year where both mentors and the students worked on it. But at the office, they were working on it like late night, bunch of times during the week. And, that robot was made in a summer, a couple days a week by two high school students. One's a junior, I think one's a senior. And it just an amazing thing. So, to say it's like a rebuild to compete, it was really more a rebuild to see what the girls could do and then teach the new kids. And then it just turned out to be this, they did it to be funny, and it turned out to be this like ridiculous thing. But my favorite rebuild of all time, the majority of the first community, even back then, didn't know about it. It's all the way back in 2009. It was the first year for districts for Michigan. And so the Thunder Chickens, we always practice with 469 because they had a full field. Everybody came to practice. Well, I got to see 67's first robot before, and they rebuilt that thing before the first district and showed up with a completely different robot. And the robot everyone else saw, but they had like this single turreted. They thought they were going to shoot long range. It was like the funniest thing. I'm like, these guys are going to be horrible. And then they show up to the first district and they have this like dumper 2-lane, like puker, I called it, that just cleaned the floor up with everybody the whole season. So that's like the most amazing rebuild I've ever seen that most people don't even know was a rebuild. They didn't even use the 6 weeks to build that thing. It was like done in a week.
That's awesome.
That's wild.
I'm going to mention a couple that come to my mind. One, a personal one, and actually this was back a few years ago when Nick and myself were actually on the same team, and we were on 2026. We rebuilt a whole robot for IRI in 2013, and I just want to talk about that experience a little bit. It was one of those things where we put students up to the challenge. They worked really hard. And came out with a cool product that was very similar. Like we pulled in designs from 341 and 254 and other teams that just like was this Frankenstein amalgamation bot. And the coolest thing ever was just seeing it do a 30-point climb in like a few seconds. And the crazy thing is that we didn't have any programming on it. So the climb, which was like a 254 climb, was all manual. So it was just somebody just reaching up and like hitting the bar, letting the robot swing and trying to time it correctly. And it was just as glorious to watch it fall. The one that really pops into my head, to me for a modification, the 900 bot of 2015. I mean, that was nuts. I mean, I know that to do that at the championship event and to have that pass inspection, even though we didn't get to see it, to me, that was just one of those things where our team was on Einstein during that time, and we wanted to see it. Even if we knew that we might not be able to get any cans, like we wanted to see it on the field because that thing just looked so ridiculously badass.
Definitely. So Mike and I are gonna talk about this one together. He found this picture, and I was hoping that somebody would pull it up.
Oh man.
So this is going to really show a throwback picture of Mike Starke. But on 340 in 2006 for Ruckus, we built this Jeep bot. So Mike, was it Reese who found the Jeep frame?
I can't remember.
I think it was. He kind of came in and found this Power Wheels Jeep on the side of the road, and he's like, "Hey, let's build a logo score for Ruckus out of this thing for 2006." And it was just do you remember the story about it catching on fire?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. You can tell it because you probably know it more.
So this robot was going, and things were going okay, and all of a sudden one of the wires started smoking, and it was coming from right under the hood of the robot. So Reese, our team leader, goes onto the field, lifts the hood of this robot, and like moves the smoke out of the way to shut it off because the power switch was inside.
There's a video of it somewhere.
So did you say you had to lift the hood?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was so funny.
That's incredible.
It was the best.
It's like I think it only held like 6 balls, maybe, or 8 balls or something.
Yeah.
It was just like we were just goofing around with it.
Based on that, 3 people in fun have had car fires.
That's true.
So, you two and Libby.
Yeah.
Oh, no one's told you about my car fire. That's another day.
All right.
Maybe there's something going on here. There are cars in this show.
Yes, this is the kind
All
of
right.
thing. So, all right, let's. Oh, hold on. We got something else here. Never mind. Our producer is queuing us up, and then he said no. So let's move on here.
Oh, we built 2 Jeep-bots.
Actually, show this. Yeah, show this here. This is another Jeep-bot.
Wait.
Oh, maybe it's this one then.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Where'd it go?
Is it supposed to be like right before it caught on fire?
Oh, I forgot we built the second Jeep-bot.
Totally forgot.
This is it, though. He was just about to, but when it cut off.
This is some quality camera work.
Yeah.
That's
so
4x3.
Look at that. Yeah, that's smoking.
Yeah, watch.
So this was the other Jeep-bot.
Who would build?
Oh, no.
Jeep-bots?
Go back, Nick. Oh, that's
No,
how it ends?
The video ends, man.
Oh, he's just about to walk
Somebody cut
over.
out the best part. That's okay.
All right, I'll find it.
Good times.
All right, let's move on here.
Yep.
So before we get into Paul's story, for Vexen first, our main headline for tonight is about districts in Texas. I'm sure many are celebrating here, and maybe a few people not so happy, but I'm going to mispronounce this name, and I apologize. Christine Polei, is that how you pronounce it, Paul? Do you know?
I have no idea.
All right. So who is the president and executive director of First in Texas, officially announced less than 2 weeks ago that in 2019, the district model will become a reality for Texas. Texas has been one of those states where many have hoped for districts, but many never thought that it would become a reality as it really is in the ranks of California, Minnesota, and Illinois for states that might not just ever make the leap. We'll add in Wisconsin too. But here we are. Texas, the state with the 4th most amount of teams in FRC, at least the last time I checked, and the largest geographical area in the continental United States is going districts. And while overall this seems to bode well for Texas, this is a monumental shift for teams outside of Texas in available regionals. I mean, it's 6 regionals that are taken away, especially for teams in Oklahoma and Arizona, New Mexico, neighboring states are close, so Louisiana as well. So in the 6 regionals, here's some stats for you. The 6 regionals in Texas, there was in 2017, 44 team spots in those regionals were occupied by non-Texas teams, some of those international. And currently for 2018, 42 spots are occupied by non-Texas teams. So Paul, I want to bring up a couple questions for you. First off, Districts 2019, are you excited for it? What does it mean for 3310 for you? Is it something you're looking forward to? And then also, in your opinion, if you look at first, this is kind of more specifically U.S., but there are some international teams that attend Texas events. Does Texas going districts put pressure on other traditional event areas to consider districts in the future, or do they just need to keep doing more and more regionals to make up for other areas going districts?
Man, you asked a lot of questions at the same time. So, all right. So districts, I'll just answer what I want to answer. So, yeah, it's about time for Texas. You know, the only people that don't like districts are people who haven't done districts. You know, I was like the biggest detractor from districts back in 2008 when they were proposing it for Michigan. And let me tell you, I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, I wish if I could tell 2008 Paul one thing about that, I'd be like, hey, man, get on the committee, have a voice. They asked me to be on the committee. I said no. I said I think it's a dumb idea, but I couldn't have been more wrong. So, like, for Texas team, this is big. I mean, if you guys are around, like anyone who was around in 9 and 10 and 11 and I don't know, even up to 12, like the Michigan teams kind of dominated. Mm-hmm. It was because we had so many, especially 9 and 10. There's so many more matches than everybody else. We had so much more practice. We had so much more everything. We had bag time that we could tune Auton on the real robot, and everyone else had to do it at a regional event. It's like it's a huge advantage. Not to mention for 3310, it's a money thing, right? I mean, so we're going to get 2 events in Texas for the price of 1. You can't really say it any other way, because right now we're going to Arkansas just because we like playing with 16, and we're going what's funny is further away from the Arkansas for us is where are we going? El Paso. Yeah, that's actually it's in state, but it's actually further from us. Yeah, by a lot. So for me, I'm excited for 3310. And again, in 4 years, in like everywhere else in Texas, the kids aren't going to know any other way, right? So, I heard Libby in the last show saying, "Oh, this is what it's like to be at a real regional." But okay, go to 2 district events, go to the district championship, and okay, there's your real event, the district championship, right? So it's just we want to emulate the sports model. This 100%, especially in Texas, emulates the sports model. You play in your districts, you get enough points, you qualify for the state tournament, you go to the state tournament, and the only teams that should go to the World Championship are the winners of the state tournament. It just makes sense. So
Paul, real quick, I was in Dallas last December, and I happened to drive by AT&T Stadium at the time. There was all these lights on, so my fiance and I decided to stop in, and they were doing the high school Division III state football championships at AT&T Stadium. Is that the next step are we going to see robotics there too?
Yeah, I mean, we better. That seems possible, right?
I think so. I think it really does.
Yeah, every football championship is there. So we have basically 6A is the largest schools, 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A. So they're all there. I think football stops 3A and below or something like that. But every football championship for the state is there. I think it's feasible that the state championship for robotics is there. But here's the thing, though. For most athletics and activities in Texas, they try as much as they can to have the state championship in Austin, which, for those of you that don't know, is the capital of Texas, but state capital of Texas. So, the swimming championships are there. There's a lot of academic championships that are there at UT State, on UT's campus. So, I would expect for the first year, I bet you we'll be playing the state championship somewhere in Austin.
Yeah, so I kind of want to echo Paul's response of, early I was a kind of big detractor of districts, and as as he is excited that Texas has finally gone to districts, I'll be excited, someday when New York finally goes to districts, because right now the lack of Texas or the loss of the Texas regionals is what we face all around us, right? We've lost Ohio and Pennsylvania and Ontario. Everyone around us has gone to districts. So, we're playing, the 2 plays that we are in, or that we have in Rochester, and for us on 3015, it's Long Island. And for a lot of other, New York teams, it was Utica, which is the Central New York regional, which is new, or Tech Valley. So we're already competing all over New York State, similar to a district model, except we're paying, $5,000 for each one instead of 2 for 1. So, we're kind of in a tough spot right now. We're looking forward, hopefully, that when New York finally makes the jump, and then hopefully the inter-district play will allow us to kind of have that, a little bit of travel, which is, I think, for me at least, that was one of the big reasons why it was so against districts in the first place. We were so disappointed when Michigan went to districts, because we're like, because FLR, Finger Lakes, used to be a pretty popular event for some Michigan teams. So we were disappointed that, it was unlikely that we would see those teams in the future. But so now hopefully, when everyone's in districts, there's some inter-district play. Hopefully that can happen, and we'll start seeing those teams again. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when New York does what Texas did.
That's a really great point, Justin, about how, I didn't really think about that, about how for us locally in New York, we're kind of now surrounded by districts, and hopefully naturally we should be the next one to go. And then how that will open up to be able to see some of those teams again that we haven't seen in a long time with that district play. I think we're all big proponents of districts on this show for all the reasons already mentioned by Paul and Justin. One thing that I'm always excited about the districts is just because the amount of events that are played, we get to see just a lot more teams making the name for themselves, specifically speaking for the top 25 and recap and everything. So that's what I'm always excited about when a new district pops up, is what teams maybe kind of were in that second tier that now can kind of break through and really be known. So those are my thoughts.
I want to bring up a comment that was just made in chat real quick. And Matt from 1511, was a long time viewer of the show, said, honestly, everything will be districts in probably 5 to 6 years. What do you guys think about that? Is that viable for areas that are really remote, or does it not really matter because they already have to travel a long ways anyway? If we talk about specifically the 48, I think is a good example.
Well, like, okay, Texas, like someone did a thing when people were egging Texas to go to districts, like the entire Northeast district or whatever fits in West Texas. There's like not one Texas team that would be in that area. If Texas can solve the problem, you know, almost anywhere can solve the problem, to be honest with you.
That's a good point.
And to clarify, though, I mean, we don't fully know if Texas has solved the problem. They are going districts, but we don't necessarily know if there are going to be some negative ramifications of that possibly, too. So
there probably will be.
They kind of look. I mean, there's always going to be hiccups no matter what, right? But I think the really observation point will be 2 to 3 years from now when we look at Texas and how they've continued to strengthen themselves. And I think I'm thinking in the right direction that it will be. That we can then translate to other areas. And I'll tell you, in Wisconsin, I've been hoping and praying and talking about districts for a few years now. And I even just want to get like a state championship started so we can start down that road. And we've begun talks about that at a state level. We had a town hall for it earlier this year. 4 districts, and so they are starting to explore something like that. But around us, we have, once again, Michigan, which we can't go to, Minnesota, which has 200 plus teams and not enough events for it, though they have added 2 events in the last 2 years, which has kind of alleviated that. And then Illinois to the south, which fills up very quickly as well. So districts, in my opinion, would open that up quite a bit. And Justin, I'm 100% on board with you that the key of the benefit of being in districts is not necessarily almost just districts, but now you can play anywhere. You're not restricted to where you play anymore. If you are not a district team, you are restricted to where you play. If you are a district team, as long as there's an open spot in any other district or any other regional, you can go to it, no questions asked.
Yeah, that's right. And we had a discussion on the show, I remember, about how those district teams competing at regionals and winning regional chairman's awards, and kind of if that was kosher, because as a non-district team we couldn't go to their events and compete for the same thing. But yeah, I agree with you.
One other thing, I maybe I'll put it up there, and I don't know if anybody has a good answer to that, but one of the, I think, big benefits for Texas is the ability for third plays, because that's money that the district is actually getting then. And from a business model standpoint, I'm curious on how that revenue change is going to happen versus what they've had currently to what they're going to, because I don't know what the exact Paul, do you know how many districts there are planned for 2019 or anything? I don't know if anybody's on the map.
No, but we got a hint of it last year. So we played in Waco last year. Yeah, last year. It was a district. I mean, they were getting ready for districts, right? And so there were several events that were held in high school gyms. Waco was one of them. The benefit in Texas is, Texas high schools are massive. They're enormous compared to like what I was used to for the most part in Michigan, and they can handle it. So it's like it's really expandable, especially with the low cost of running the events. Let's forget about the registration fees for a second. Just the cost to run the events. Like, you want to ask my opinion, I think Minnesota is crazy. They spent way too much money on regionals. With the amount of teams that they have, they could have put, and all the volunteers they have up there, they could go to districts and save a whole boatload of money.
And they have really good personnel up there too. So Minnesota's kind of a beast of its own, but maybe that will be inspiring to them from Texas as well. And the interesting thing, somebody will say there's only 4 events in Minnesota. It's really not true. The Minnesota Planning Committee also runs the New North Dakota Regional and also the Seven Rivers Regional as well. So Planning Committee is not the right word, but Minnesota essentially runs these events as well. So yeah, it will be. I think it'll be really interesting as somebody who is in the North area next to a state who has a ridiculous amount of teams to see if that conversation might actually spur up now.
All right, Tyler, what do you think? Want to move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so just a reminder, hit the follow and subscribe buttons as we do have our giveaway coming up. But now what we want to do is we want to do something I'm personally very excited about. We're going to kind of get Paul's story, and Paul's a guy that I've personally looked up to for a long time. He won his championship Woody Flowers Award at my first championship in 2005. So I know that we could run a whole show just based on your kind of biography, but kind of take us through, anything that you think is kind of important all the way back from the beginning. So how you got involved in robotics, 217, and even going as far back as your time at FANUC to now.
Justin, you're gonna make me cry. All right, so I've probably forgotten more than I've remembered, so I'll give it a shot. So I think many people share a similar story how they get involved. I mean, now it's to the point where it's gotten so big that like kids did FRC or some other FIRST program, in high school, and they want to give back. But for me, it was I had just recently moved back to Michigan. This was back in 99-ish, 90. And so I contacted my high school physics teacher and said, say, hey, what's up, whatever. And he's like, hey, I got this thing you might like. And I was working at FANUC at the time. I was I worked in the product development group designing industrial robots. And so I came to the kickoff meeting. I had no idea what I was getting. That was for the 2000 season, right? And so it was their second year. I'm sitting through this meeting, and I have no idea what to expect. And, and so slowly but surely just kind of, got more and more involved. I can elaborate more on that. But it's literally my high school physics teacher saying, hey, come on, you got to check this out. And I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And so I got hooked. And what's funny is I'd gotten married in October of 99. So I can't even say my wife knew what she was getting into, because then boom, the end of October. So like 2 months later, I'm gone, crazy amount of hours at we work at the Ford transmission plant in Michigan, Sterling Heights. So that's how I got started. I've been at FANUC, I was at FANUC for 12 years designing industrial robots. FANUC sponsored a few teams in the area. They sponsored the Detroit Regional 1 year, but it was mostly just me getting involved. And I didn't really know how involved engineers should be. And so I kind of just the first year, like showed kids how to use SolidWorks, just kind of did some things. And then, I didn't like correct their mistakes, or I didn't tell them, well, maybe that's a dumb idea. Just kind of let everything happen. And then they had like kind of a miserable year, and they were really frustrated. So as each year went on, 2001, 2002, 2000, I got a little more involved. And then 2004, and so we had really good mentors on that team. There was a tight-knit group of people. We had a dedicated teacher who was my former high school physics teacher, Ron Arsheen, who's still with the team.
Wow.
He started the team, still with the team. We have a group of engineers who were all Ford engineers when they started. They're now all retired. They're still helping out the team. They got some new blood there after I left. But it took like an army of people. But I'll never forget in 2004, we had a great build season. We had fun, we thought it was cool. All the kids got along. We got, just good time. I love the build season. It's the camaraderie there is like amazing. And so we went through the regional season, and we just had like a disastrous thing. And it really came down to like some kids that were very vocal had some really bad ideas that just got used on the robot. And it was that moment I said, man, it doesn't matter how good of a build season we had. Like these kids don't remember that right now. They're just really demotivated. They don't like it. So that was when I decided I was going to institute like the Copioli absolute veto power. So I sat everybody down. I sat everybody down in the summer, and we had our recap. And I said, okay, here's what I think we should do. And basically, the whole team decides strategy, whatever. The design team, the kids and adults that are on the design team, they get to decide what the robot does. But if any idea, anything that we go down, whether it was, the idea came from a student or from a mentor, I got to say, no, that's a dumb idea. We're doing it differently. And so, that started the 2005 season. And, 2005, 6, 7, 8. 7 was an off year, but 8, 9, 10, they had some pretty good robots those years. And it's just because we kind of refined the process and everybody got on board with a system. I think it's really important that your team has a system. It doesn't have to be like my system, but you have to have a system. And you have to have a group of mentors and teachers that are all on the same page, right? Because the continuity comes from the mentors and the teachers. So to keep the system alive, you have to have everybody on the same page. And I know that I got, especially in those days, I got a lot of the front end publicity, but man, it just like it is with 3310 now, there is a host of, a handful of mentors, engineers, and teachers, and one teacher on each of those teams that are the glue of that team. And without it, there's just no way one person can do it for so long. This is like
one thing I want to mention real quick is, on 3310, when you mentioned when we were prepping the show to go, we actually had a lot of troubles finding a picture of you in 3310 because there were so many of just other pictures out there versus when you look at pictures of the past. And if I type in like 217 of like earlier days, there's a lot with you in it. I think that just kind of shows that. I think that is kind of what you're exactly saying. So there's so many people that are part of this, and so many people that are contributing to this. It's not the Paul show. It's a team show, right?
Yeah, and that's when I was younger, I was in my 20s and early 30s when I was on the chicken. So, I didn't really get that part of it. I didn't actually pay attention to it. I just kind of did what I did, and being a little bit crazy, the camera kind of moves to you just to see what train wreck's going to happen next. But now that I'm on 3310, I took a year off in 2014. It was like the only year I could. My oldest wasn't in high school yet. And so I knew that once he got into high school, there'd be 8 straight years between him and his younger brother. So I took 2014 off. That helped. But then I realized, like, look, you got to make sure that everyone else, you have to actively make sure that the other people that are contributors are out in front. And so I've actively tried to just kind of like be behind the scenes because, we have a team dynamic that's very similar to the Thunder Chickens on 3310. And they had an amazing group of a mentor and a teacher, specifically, Brian Selly and Leslie Reese on 3310. That team was almost there. That team they really only needed 1 or 2 pieces to the puzzle. And I filled one of those pieces that they needed. But, if you saw the robot at Champs this year, that shooting ability, I had absolutely nothing to do with. That was Brian Selly and a group of 4 kids that just programmed and didn't stop programming that robot the entire year. So with both of these teams, it takes and you guys know, you've run teams. There's high profile mentors, but I guarantee you successful teams are not run by just one high profile mentor. There's a ton of people in the background that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
There has to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So Paul, you kind of mentioned those years, like we say 2005 to 9, somewhere in there, where Thunder Chickens had a lot of success, and you guys were world champions winners in 2006 and 2008. One of my personal favorite games of all time is 2006 and Aim High, and one of my favorite memories is watching the 217 bot on Einstein in that year, just being able to climb the ramp and then getting pinned to the side of the ramp up there, but then still just being able to just throw a ton of balls in the net. Not having the most flashiest bot either, which was so great about it. Like it just doesn't look like a world championship robot, and I guess today's standards, you would say. But,
no. It didn't by those standards either.
No, yeah. So could you, like, out of all your time on 217, the Thunder Chickens, I know it's going to be hard, but could you maybe pull out one of your like most memorable moments and how it like impacted you?
Oh man. Okay. So there's so many, right? There's like build season ones, and then there's competition ones. So general team ones, when I joined the team in 2000, it was like it was a district team. So there was several high schools combined. There was like 70 kids on the team, and there was like 2 girls, literally 2 girls. And I'm like, well, this isn't any fun. Like, you don't have a dynamic that's, replicates society. It just seems stupid. So over the course of the next several years, when I left, the Thunder Chickens maybe had like 40 team members, but anyway, it fluctuated between 32 and 40. And my last year with the team, the last several years, it was about 16 or 17 ladies on that team. And it was important. That's important to me, that to see the camaraderie that happens between the boys and the girls when you have a relatively even mix. and you just I mean, you build better robots because there's just so many different points of view. From the competition side, this 2006, obviously because it was our first win, it was more like a sigh of relief than anything else. But that maneuver, there were two things that we practiced a lot and never used until this match. And that was the pinning of rock in the side we took advantage of that silly rule that you could just pin anyone forever at the top of that ramp. And we pinned them for 45 seconds. And the other one that you mentioned where we shot at the end, we practiced that and practiced that and practiced that. And I never let the team use it because I knew that we would need it when no one expected it. And so when we were up there and they thought they had us, we just peppered the goal. We missed half of them, but it didn't matter because we hit a lot of them.
Right.
But the key to success that year was we were an okay robot in the middle of the game, but Auton was so important. I think on Einstein, we never missed a shot in Auton. So we would get 40 points every autonomous mode. And then teams would resort to trying to play Auton defense on us, and it never worked. Because you used that Lexan that was there. We just wedged that bumper into the Lexan, and then nobody could move you. So those are two sick. Obviously, our first regional win, which I think was a Detroit regional in 2005. That was a pretty good moment. Finger Lakes regional that 2005 was my first exposure to upstate New York with what we call the pissing contest. Sorry for the language between us and 229 at the time. I thought that was hilariously funny. But
can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so that was the first time we collaborated. So what's ironic about the whole thing is I was working at Fanuc and we used our sheet metal supplier to do all the sheet metal, which now it's funny because 148 did sheet metal for 217 for so many years after that. So we decided to design different dry bases, but the same tower kind of methodology. And we cut the line at you do what you do, we do what we do, but then we're gonna have similar things. So we basically had the same robot for all intents and purposes, but it was very different in implementation. And so we got the very, very first qual match of the Finger Lakes Regional was us against 228. Maybe it was qual 3 or something. I don't know. It was a long time ago, but it was very early on in the regional. And we put up, I don't know, 8, 9, 10. It was a crazy amount of Tetras all on one goal, which is the dumbest strategy ever for that game. But we just thought it would be funny. And yeah, so that started my losing streak against John V. Noon. I think I'm 0-10 against him. Yeah.
All right. So, excuse me. Let's jump ahead a little bit. We're kind of going through. We should just call this the history of Paul or something like that. Paul, chapter 2, verse 8. So, in 2010, you were offered the position president of Vex, and correct me if I'm wrong, where you still are today. Right. And what I'm curious about is the process of moving this position. So you left 217 at some point. I think you were doing some remote mentoring, if I remember correctly. And then you went to Vex. Can you tell us about how the call went? How did you get the position?
Okay.
And what was that transition like going from Michigan to Texas?
Okay. So without getting too crazy. So before the 2004 season, they had asked a group of regional people, like 6 different regions. Canada did it, the West Coast did it, Michigan did it. We actually did game design proposals. So we designed an entire game from scratch, and we went to Dean's house and pitched it. And then we met with the game design committee at the time, and Tony Norman, the owner of IFI, was there because he was on the game design committee. And he and I got to talk, and I got to know each other, whatever. And that was kind of that. And then, when John went to work for IFI as an intern and whatever, he asked me to volunteer in 2009, this is April of 2009, at the Vex World Championship in Dallas. It was it was crazy how much it's changed since then. But yeah. I volunteered. I was an MC game announcer because it's a combined role. And volunteered, did that, was invited back to Tony's house after, chatted, and Dave Lavery was there, Jason Morello was there with Tony, and Tony offered me a job on the spot. And I'm like, you don't even know what I do. He's like, oh, Dave and Jason have told me enough. I know about, your team and that's all I need. I go, but you don't even know what I do. You don't need a resume or anything. And he's like, yeah, just think about it. I go, you can't afford me. So I get back to Michigan. Jen and I are, my wife, driving back from Texas to Michigan. And IFI was small at the time, man, really small. Hexbug hadn't started yet. The biggest division was Rack Solutions. They were everything. Vex was tiny, like super tiny, like embarrassed to say tiny. And went back and forth. What they were looking for actually was a centralized engineering group to be run by me, because that's what I did at Fanuc. So fast forward, July, I took the job to run their engineering group. So engineering for Rack Solutions, for the toys division, and for Vex. But I mostly worked on Rack Solutions stuff and Hexbug stuff. The Nano, I worked on the Nano. I'm part of the patents for that. And then when it looked like Hexbug was going to start growing, Tony said, I need to break the company up into 3 separate companies. So instead of IFI proper, we broke up into Vex. Innovation First Labs is the technical name of Hexbug and Rack Solutions. And he said, you're going to be the president of Vex. I'm like, the hell I am. Because Vex was very emotional to Tony, and I didn't want to work in the same division as Tony, because you don't need 2, high-end, high-strung, type A people in the same group. So I'm like, he's like, no, I'll be busy with Hexbug. It'll be fine. You'll be fine. And so January 2010, I took the job. I actually started IFI in 2009 in July. So I am the first and only president of Vex. Been very fortunate. It's a fantastic product line, fantastic group of people. I think we started with, there were 6 of us in Vex proper, not including like the support staff that works in the warehouse and stuff, which is a combined IFI job. Right now, working for Vex proper, it's 32 across 5 continents, because we recently just opened a warehouse in Australia and a sales office in Australia.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy, crazy ride. What's really funny is I was like an anti-Vex snob when I was in FRC, and like the first Vex challenge came out. Those of you that remember that are just too old, like me.
Right.
But I was like, who's going to do this stupid Vex thing? It's like the dumbest thing ever. And then here you go. I got my penance. I had to run the company.
A couple divorces later and things happen, right? So
yeah, so it's been a crazy, crazy thing. Yeah, we've grown. We're 15 times larger revenue-wise than we were back in beginning of 2010. So
wow, yeah, I mean, you've had a ton of growth, and a lot of that is due to your leadership and the great team making that happen. But so let's talk about a little bit about, our audience has asked us a lot about, since we've talked about having you on, and that's kind of the evolution into Vex Pro. So can you provide us with some of the history of kind of the Kitbot or the Mini Sim or the VersaPlanetary and those cool products? Yeah,
so many people don't know, in the summer of 2004, a group led by Woody Flowers, John V. Noon as an intern at IFI, and Bob Mimlich, who's the other owner of IFI, approached me about being on a committee to make a Kitbot chassis, because we called it like the anti-circle bot. So back, 2004 and before, you had these drill motors with these crazy gearboxes, and the drill motors were totally biased. So if you didn't reverse, it's just, you had to have a lot of skill to make a drive base just drive. So our goal was that every robot in the first week of events could drive around. So we, IFI took the chassis and the frame, and I took the gearbox, and I like burned a ton of favors with the documentation group at Fanuc. They did all the documentation of the whole thing. But and that's the year that we got the sim motor as the standard motor in the kit of parts, which I thought was, like, looking back, it's a pretty monumental thing that we did, to get such a standard motor with such crazy power that we kind of take for granted today. It set the stage for what can be done, right? And so, the Kitbot chassis today, through Andy Mark, you can't help but say it's like totally inspired by what we did. It was all first. It was first bought all that stuff, first, warehouse that stuff. That was all like their vision that brought, and then Woody's vision really to bring this all together. But, everybody, and it was a great experience. And that really, like I said, it was 5 years before I started working for IFI. But that experience led me to like say, hey, I could work for this company someday. And so Vex Pro, we were getting a lot of Vex customers that did VRC and also did FRC that's saying, hey, we want to, that banner ad for, anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But, saying, hey, we want stuff. And, we're a company full of FRC mentors. It's crazy how many FRC mentors or former FRC drive coaches work at IFI. So, we wanted stuff for our own teams. There's a lot of stuff that I wanted. There was a lot of product out there that I didn't think was suited, because back in the old days, like we used stuff that was not at all meant for FRC, and then like we adapted it and used it, and so that created a huge divide. I felt that we could do our part by raising the floor by just making stuff that was advanced and meant for FRC. So that first year release, I think something like 200 products or 150 products, wheels and gearboxes and just things done kind of what we say like the IFI way, very modular, very versatile. Versaplanetary came out that year, which was my baby. Me and an intern, former Thunder Chicken, designed that thing from top to bottom. I felt that there's a lot of good planetary products out there, but they weren't versatile enough. Like you couldn't change gear ratios on the fly. Like prototyping was a pain in the butt. So that's Versaplanetary. That thing's come a long way, and all user feedback, right? And so everything was based on user feedback. And then we said, okay, we need the average everyday team to be able to do like 90% of what a high-end team can do, but without all the crazy, custom parts and things. And so that's how we built out the product line. But all the engineers and stuff joke now that Vex Pro is just turned into products that Paul just no longer wants to buy on McMaster. So,
there's just a thread about favorite McMaster parts too, so that's kind of funny.
Yeah. So like we're coming out with a new product this year. It's not super exciting. It's exciting to me because I don't want to go to McMaster to buy it anymore. So I see you probably can't see it. It's like, it's a 1 inch by 1 inch polycarbonate tube with holes pre-drilled like the Versa tube is. And it's because I didn't want to buy that clear polycarbonate tube from McMaster car anymore, because we used the heck out of that on our intake this last year so it could take a beating and not like bend like aluminum does. So I'm a big fan of the polycarbonate tube. We had the 2x1 version, but this year we're coming out with the 1x1 version. And because we know like a lot of teams prototype with it, we decided that we were going to make a new Versa block that I can't even see in here. It's so dark, but that fits on the 1x1 tube. And if you can see that, it's like a Versa block mini. But what's cool is you can still fit a sim motor directly and a Versaplanetary you can mount directly to this thing. So now we got the Versa block for a 1x1 tube. We got a bunch of other stuff coming out too. I gotta say one more. So, West Coast Products, those guys are awesome. We partner with them on a lot of stuff. They came out with the aluminum Versa, like the aluminum roller. So because of my love affair with polycarbonate, we came out with a black polycarbonate version of that thing. So, oh wait, come on. There we go. I'm challenged. But so now we have a 3-foot section. It's pretty cool because this thing, it's pretty indestructible. It doesn't bend like aluminum does. It's super lightweight. So, I always wanted to be able to do like an intake on an arm that way, so it can be light. That's always like a roller claw on an arm has always got the challenge of being heavy. So we're just trying to do cool stuff. We're running out of ideas, so we use a lot of the customer feedback ideas. We do have a lot of cool, exciting things we're going to be announcing later this month and in December before kickoff. But after like ball shifters and West Coast Drive products and Versaplanetaries, there's not much excitement left in the world for us.
Well, Paul, and there's something off air, but if you want to get some really great excitement at low prices, you come talk to me later, and we'll talk about promoting those nice new products. So,
low prices.
Hey, did have a question from Nik Cousins in chat, asking about the thickness of the square tube that you showed, the 1x1 tube. Do you know what the wall thickness is?
Yeah, it's 0.1. So just like our 1x1 by 0.1 aluminum tube.
Nice.
Awesome.
It's literally a drop-in replacement for the clear McMaster polycarbonate 1x1. Because again, like those guys, man, they're awesome. We buy it a lot, but man, on some things they're just really high price.
Yeah.
So
yeah. See if you can start selling an affordable hex brooch.
Yeah, that we actually tried. It just couldn't get a good enough one for the price we wanted.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So kind of to come full circle on the Paul Copioli story, let's kind of head into the current chapter of your life, and that being 3310 Blackhawk Robotics. So this is a team that has been quite successful with 8 regional wins, 2 of them being this past year, including a Regional Chairman's Award win, a division win, and a St. Louis Championship finalist. So what got you involved with 3310 originally, and kind of take us through what led you guys into this incredible 2017 season?
Oh, yeah, sure. So you guys, you hinted at it a little bit. Oh, by the way, the pilot in the airship is my son, my 16-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's the crazy one that 2056 doesn't like anymore because he did the whatever 13th gear thing against them on Einstein. He was egged on. It was a bet, and Copioli's don't ever lose bets, so he had to do it. Yeah, but
like
Tyler's
never always repays a debt.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Tyler wasn't too happy with me, but we can't lose the bet. So anyway, So when we moved to Texas, I was kind of split in time. 2010, I actually drive coached for 148, but we did I conned John into doing like a twins robot with 217, and that was fine and good, but it was really difficult to pull off. The teams are just totally different styles. In 2011, I was flying back every week during build season, every weekend to help 217. I did that 2012 and 2013, and it got to be too much. And so in 2013, I think my oldest and Miss Reese's, who's the teacher on 3310, our sons played football together. So I got to talking to Leslie and saying, "Hey, we really like you to be on the team." I'm like, "Well, if Giovanni, my oldest, joins the robot team, I'll think about it." So looking ahead, I'm like, "Oh crap, 2014 is like the only year I'm going to be able to take off because he started high school in 2015." So then I committed to them. 2015, I had helped the team. Brian Selly and a couple of the other mentors on there, Gene and Leon, and then Leslie. Leslie's like the everything. She's there every day. She's the only teacher. And Brian was like doing everything for the engineers, leading the charge with Leon and Gene helping. So they needed another piece of the puzzle to share the load. So I felt like I would have less workload than I did on the Thunder Chickens because I wouldn't be taking, because I'm not the lead engineer. Brian is, which I'm perfectly happy with, because nobody on that team wanted to drive coach. And I'm like, well, that's my only condition. I have to drive coach because that's like the fun part for me. So it was kind of a match made for each other. Took 2014 off, did Build Blitz. I got my robot fixed doing Build Blitz that year. And then took the rest of the year just making fun of the game. I know everybody that played it liked it, but I thought it was dumb.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, so whatever. Sometimes you make dumb games. Vex has made dumb games too. It happens. Happens to the best of us. So 2015, that was hilarious because I told them that we needed to make a mark, right? We needed to make winning didn't matter. We just needed everyone to know who we were. So then we built that crazy, stupid arm thing that John still makes fun of me of. I still think it was awesome. It's like the only time ever in FRC we'll be able to do that. It was a great learning experience for the kids. I got a lot of kids interested in machining. I got a lot of kids interested in robot design. We laid out that entire robot in 2D like cross-section sketches. So I taught them how to do that. It was a really cool experience. It got 3310 kids used to iterating, but they were like build up to the last minute kids anyway. So the team really thrived on that craziness. They loved the attention. They loved the attention of the video for the can grabbers, which we debated heavily about, and we've learned our lesson. That's why we don't do release videos anymore. That was just stupid, the can grabber thing. We kind of laid the gauntlet down and showed our hat a little too early.
Yeah.
But that was fun. It was scary testing that thing. We did some crazy tricks to the VersaPlanetary to make that happen. But 2015 was all about like 3310 making their name for themselves. And then 2016 we got down to business of like, okay, let's get the process tweaked. They had a really good process to begin with, but it was not quite refined. So we just been tweaking the iteration process, the strategy process. Everybody's bought in. We've got an amazing senior class. Way too many, like a lot of kids in our senior class this year. But we're just gelling, I feel like I felt in the heyday of the Thunder Chickens. Like everybody is buying into the way of doing things, and we're a team. We're a side-by-side team. We're not afraid to say it. We got mentors and students working side by side. I don't have an opinion on what other teams should do. It just works for our teams. And I've hired a whole heck of a lot of kids that have been on my teams before. And so, Vex is built on Vex and FRC kids, really.
So if I want to get hired, I just have to become a high school student and be on 3310.
Yeah, it's pretty much. Well, no. I mean, we hire more than just that. We take recommendations from other teams and other team leads and stuff like that. So we just hired a kid from 2468, Garrison, who was an intern with us this summer. He's crazy good. I got a couple of my key 3310 kids. We got a bunch of 148 kids, a couple kids from Michigan because we use Kettering interns. So you do have to be, you really do have to be either like a top-end VRC kid or a top-end FRC kid to even have a chance to get at least an engineering gig at IFI.
To earn your favor.
Yeah, it's basically John and I recommending almost everybody for engineering, especially in VAX. Now, John's moved to Raxlus, and so he's doing the same thing there. But, yeah, you have to be an intern to ever get hired at IFI now, it seems. That's the way it seems. We don't hire cold anymore.
Well, it's good. It's good to build up from within, man. If you got the right personnel and it keeps growing the right way to the culture that you're setting, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, people ask me like, why do I put so much time in it? And it really comes. It used to be like I was all foofy and centered, it's all about the kids. Well, really now that's all true, right? But for me, the motivation, like it's not just philanthropic now. It's like, okay, I am finding really good, capable engineers before they even become engineers and before anyone else even knows who they are. Yeah. And so that's what we built IFI on over the last several years, last 8 years, 7, 8 years. And so I think the results speak for itself.
So I want to wrap up kind of the Paul history conversation here and talk about something that might be a little painful, but I think it was still overall a great season for you guys, and talk about Einstein Finals 2. So Nick had it up on the screen just a little bit ago. And one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is just to kind of get your perspective of the match. So it was, I've been in FRC since 2001, and this to me was one of the most epic matches in FRC history that I've seen, especially on an Einstein Finals as well. So, a couple weeks ago, we had our premiere show Finalysis where Mason Marquis analyzed this match and had a lot of really good things to say. And I'm curious about your thoughts after you've had time to digest this match. Would you have done anything differently, or was this one of those where this match, it was 3 points. Was it just too close to call to make any other decisions for this?
No, about right when we got to the pad, I realized my mistake. This is a total script on me. So the way we ran this alliance, I think it's just everybody being nice to me. So Jeff on 1986, it's like, hey man, so I kind of ran I was kind of like the general, in the back of the alliance station, because my drivers didn't really need me, because my operator did enough yelling for everyone, believe it or not. So he was coaching our driver. So I was just basically making sure that we had a pretty adaptive strategy, because we went into every match, because we were in a pretty loaded division too. So I was really worried about 610 and 1114.
Oh yeah,
those are just stellar programs with really good strategy. So, and I was worried about, Mason called us Team Silly Wheels during the champs in St. Louis, because our fourth robot had traction, but we had Mecanum and Omni wheels were all 3 robots on Einstein. We didn't have any traction amongst any of us. Yeah, so it was crazy. But we had an adaptive strategy. Like 1986, their responsibility was 1 gear unless I told them I needed a second one because we were doing something else, or we got caught up or whatever, or we got a load of balls. It was like a very adaptive strategy, so we were constantly communicating. A couple of things. During Einstein, nobody was getting 2 gears in Auton, right? And so, ain't nobody. And nobody that, could shoot enough balls to matter. I don't mean to say that being mean, but some of the all-gear alliances, I think, could do 2, but it didn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So So, I know the 254 Lions had tried, but they had like failed desperately to get 2 gears in every one of their matches on the division and in every match on Einstein, right? So we're like, okay. So when you're on the field, all we were looking at was the ball differential, right? So we weren't looking at score differential because the score sometimes was laggy or didn't, catch up as fast as the ball differential. So I missed the fact that they got 2 gears in Auton, right? So missing that, I'm looking at the balls and I'm like, okay, guys, there's just no way they can catch us with what they have in their hopper. So we got this. So just go ahead and go back and hang because, when the ropes drop, anything stupid can happen. You never really know what penalty they're going to call. Well, you know what penalties they're going to call, but you never really know because you can't really see that well if you're hitting a rope or if you're hitting a robot that's hitting a rope. And those guys were smart enough to like go touch the rope while they're shooting. So I decided, I said, just get back and we'll just hang and we'll just, let it be exciting as they almost catch us in balls, which if you look, they didn't catch us in balls, not even close. But the reason for the difference was the 2-gear Auton that like I completely 100% missed. Like I didn't realize it until after I saw the score and I'm like, why do they have an extra 20? They got 2 gears in Auton. It was like the only time they did it the whole time on Einstein. So another thing too is our climber was actually slower the whole year, so we needed more time. So I wasn't really used to the fast climber. The kids pushed me. I'm like, climber's good enough. We're fine. But they kept pushing. And then, so our climber got actually like half the time. It took us half the time to hang that we normally did throughout the whole season. So I wasn't used to that timing. So I was extra conservative about the hang. And so we're sitting up there helpless when we were doing a pretty decent job of defense against them. Cause with those Omni wheels forward and back, we had great traction. So we had enough to disturb 254. We just didn't think we had to any longer. So yeah, I played that, like that one mistake. It's like instant. As soon as we got hit with the confetti, I'm like, 2-gear Auton. Yeah. So
I mean, it was a big risk by the Blue Alliance to take those extra shots. I mean, they had to do it, right? But of course, when you're down in the final seconds and you might not be able to climb, there was other teams this year who got burnt by doing something like that, by trying to place that last gear or trying to shoot those last few pieces of fuel, and then they missed their climb. So I think on both ends, really. You can always nitpick every single little thing, right? But I think from a strategic standpoint on how both alliances approached it, I think, once again, I think it's one of the best matches in first. And that's not just because the score was separated by 3 points. I think it was overall strategy by both these alliances. I think was just played very well, and it executed well on the field. And sure the hell was a great break from watching BMX bikes on the track for a while.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it was a 90%er. We had 97%. We had 97% good strategy. Their alliance had 100%. Like, you're being nice. That was just a flat out mistake. Like, getting used to it was lazy, right? Just counting the gear. I was just counting the balls. If I was counting the points, I would have told the guys to stay longer, right? It didn't matter. It was our last match one way or the other. So, and to be fair, in the round robin, if you remember, we were on the Blue Alliance and they were on red. And for some reason, we didn't. I guess we never shot on red, but everyone was saying that that red, they weren't scoring as many points in auto.
Yeah.
So
and that was a big issue for 1986, wasn't it?
Only in one match. I don't know what it was. They said that no, it was just like normal, whatever. But for us, I would have rather been on blue because our blue Auton was better than anyone else's for whatever reason. Yeah. Because when we played the Poofs, Alliance, we ran our Auton in blue in that round robin match, and so the Poofs knew, and they scored oh man, them in Strike Force, they had to score 100. I swear, it felt like they scored 100 balls in that round robin match while we were up there hanging, and so they knew that they had to shoot to the last second to beat us in general, and they would have come up short if they didn't get the 2-gear Auton. So we would have been to a third match, no doubt, right? Yeah. So they kind of saw in that match where they got beat in Auton. And they would just have to shoot because our gear running was a little bit faster than theirs in general. So we had a little bit more flexibility on when we could shoot balls. Now they clearly had the advantage because of the ball pickup from the floor, which ours was non-existent, but 1986 didn't like to do that.
Yeah.
They like to get from the hopper. So They had some advantages on us, but we felt like the Auton advantage was enough for us. And if I wasn't dumb and just counted balls, we probably would have gone to a third match.
Well, great matches out of the way, Paul, and great. We really appreciate you giving us, the history of not just yourself, but just the stories that you get out of this, right? And that's what I love to hear is just the history of what's gone on throughout, in this case, Michigan and Texas for areas, and I think that's just a really, really cool thing. So I really appreciate you taking the time to let us know about yourself, and of course, let us know about the history of yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was great. Oh,
Yeah.
Man, you guys showed that video with him spinning that gear. That's giving Tyler is probably screaming at the TV.
If he watches our shows, yeah. Hey, before Paul, we do have a couple of Q&A questions we do want to ask you. I hope you don't mind. But before we do that, it is time to start our giveaway. So remember to win. You do have to follow our channel. So click that little follow button up on top, or for 5x chance to win, please subscribe. Give us a few bucks a month if you value what we do and you want to keep these shows going. We appreciate any support that you give us so we can keep it going. You can subscribe for free through Twitch Prime. So Christine, I'm gonna ask you to rely on your voice for just a little bit here. I hope it's back just a little bit. But this drawing, we're gonna do a digital scan of this and give away a couple of those. What does Chad have to type in order to get this giveaway?
So tonight's giveaway phrase is 50 Shades of Black, all one word.
Is that based on the robot there, I take it?
Yeah, I think I've only used about 3 colors for this entire thing. It's been great.
Well, it's really good. Do you want to talk about this drawing at all, by the way? Like, this is a really, really cool drawing.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I was excited to draw this. Nick sent me the reference photo yesterday, and it was actually pretty easy to sketch. It's a pretty simple looking robot, but like the amount of black on this robot is insane. It's been really cool to see all the CNC work in there too.
Yeah, I mean the contrast is really cool. What did you use to draw that? Like I saw it looked like almost like a colored pencil as like a watercolor kind of.
Yeah, so I have watercolor pencils. They're pretty awesome.
Literally.
Pretty easy to work with, and then just some archival pens to get the outlining in.
What is the brush on the bumpers? What was that?
The what?
The brush on the bumpers that you were using?
Oh yeah, just paintbrush.
Is it just with watercolor?
Not necessarily. So watercolor brushes are usually like super floppy. This is just like a typical synthetic kind of brush.
And what was the media that you were like? What were you painting with it, for lack of a better term?
So I was using the watercolor pencils. It's nice because you can kind of either leave them as regular colored pencils or you can move them around with water.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I want one.
Yeah.
Well, you can get a chance to win, and and Paul, don't forget to subscribe for you get your 5 times chance. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
All right, cool, Christine. Thank you. So I can't wait to give that away a little bit later. So Paul, we have a few questions from our Fun Nation. We're just going to kind of rapid fire through these. So just quick answers. So Foster from VRC 8081 STEM Robotics asks, Paul, you run a super successful robotics company, are very involved with the fastest growing robotics competition with tons of travel for both and spend a huge amount of time as a mentor on 3310. What's your secret to kind of getting everything done without burning out?
VR, running VACs and supporting the VRC events and things like that kind of forces me to literally only work on FRC intensely from January, through the build season, the true intended 6 weeks, and I'll call it plus because it's really kind of transcended into the competition season, but it really does level off. So it's 5 days a week, Saturdays all day during build season. But then when we get to the driver tryouts and practice and drive practice, it's really mostly a couple nights a week. The kids do it by themselves, and then I'll come on Saturday. We practice with the Robo Wranglers at their fantastic facility in Greenville. So, that it's just this all year team thing. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just not a believer in it. The way you get mentors like me to dedicate our time and do it for so many years is we've got to have a limited time during the year to do it. Mm-hmm. And so that January through, competition season is plenty.
Perfect.
All right, next question is from our buddy Caltran, who's on 2410 Metal Mustang Robotics. He wants to ask, Paul, what's one piece of advice you would give to any current or aspiring drive coach?
Oh, don't do it. No.
Don't do it. You said it was the most fun thing to do.
Especially for this game.
It is, but the heartbeat goes up. It's as much adrenaline as any other sport. No, I think the biggest one is create a bond with your kids. So, all the kids that try out for the driver, just create a bond with that drive team, because these kids are gonna get a lot of you, and like if they trust you and they feel like you've got their best interests in life in mind, they're gonna have more fun and relax when they're out on the field. I mean, there's so many learning moments in the stress of the moment. Like I even lose it. Even now, like when I was younger, I used to lose it a lot more than I would like to admit. But even now, I get to those moments where I've got to like my inner voice has to be like, okay, dude, you're trying to give an example to these kids. They slip up too, so it's good to say, hey, like it's okay to make mistakes. You're not gonna be perfect in everything you do. So I think creating that bond with your drive team is super, super important.
All right, so Alfie from FRC 1285, the Big Bang asks, based on the teams competing, which event would you like to take your team to or attend this year if you could?
To be fair, I haven't really looked. Again,
there's too many events to look at.
I know.
Well, no, but to be like, again, I went to the parent meeting on last Monday or whenever it was. And like I just go where the kids tell me to go in Slack, but I do not spend a lot of time in the off season. Miss Reese will ask my opinion of like what week events or what like when I have conflicts or whatever because of my VEX schedule, and I'll just tell her what weeks. And like aside from like saying I don't want to go to Dallas regional for a bunch of different reasons, that's about it. And so I mean I could barely remember they were going to El Paso. But for us, we like going to events that like we think we can win because we have to win to get in, right? So
yeah,
I could be better prepared to answer that question as we get closer and somebody tells me, "Oh man, did you see who's going to so and so?" Okay, then I would look. But until then, I don't even really care.
I'll send that real quick around the table here if anybody wants to just give 20, 30 seconds on which event they're looking forward to or which one they wanna would want to go to if they could. Justin?
I'm with Paul. I don't know. I'm not in tune yet.
All right, Justin.
The past few years, I think the Waterloo region was always one that attracted a lot of attention. So that would have been a good one to go to.
I love that regional. I love working that regional. So fun, or district or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, you always did a great job too.
Always.
I've had a couple of people point out to me that the Arizona North Regional this year is going to be absolutely nuts. So I just want to read off some of the teams going to this one. And I have one personally, but some teams going to Arizona North this year. You got 8 Pally Robotics, Cheesy Poofs, Falcon Robotics, High Rollers, Crush. Man, I can probably keep going on these. Taters is going. Coconuts. There's a bunch of other really good teams that are going to this regional. So that, from a competition wise, I'm very much so looking forward to that. Personally, this year, the first regional I'm going to, or going to the first time, is I'm emceeing the Las Vegas regional this year. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there and just kicking a lot of butt and having a great time, and hopefully resetting the pace that the event experienced last year. So hopefully if you're out at Las Vegas, guys, come down and say hi, because we're going to make that event awesome.
There's like no way I could go to the Las Vegas regional. There's like no way. I would never make my matches ever.
Vegas is a second home to me. I've been there over 15 times. And so for me, like, man, I love the Strip, but I love so much more about just outside of Vegas than that it's, I've learned to train myself a little bit now. So. Alrighty. I think we had one more question, huh, Justin?
Yeah,
we're going to cover.
This is a Nik Cousin question, if there ever was one. So on the scale of 1 to 2 champs, how much do you hate 775 Pro drivetrains?
5 champs. I mean, I know that seems silly to say. Like, they'll be fine. Like, we're testing them. I know we had a severe dyno issue. We have like this amazing, super awesome dyno that I was allowed to buy to just test every motor under the sun. But we had like a severe power failure with our power supply, so I couldn't get all the testing I wanted to do on these drivetrains and on the 775 drivetrains. But here, the bottom line is this: like, if you have to do all this software stuff, and we did a 775 drivetrain in 2006, and we were fine. It was a super light robot, it's possible, but it's just like I would rather put my energy and my worry somewhere else. I mean, so much so that like I don't even like sim motor drivetrains anymore. I'm like on the mini sim bandwagon.
I bet you are.
And the mini sim was designed for FRC. Like, we took the sim motor and we reconstructed the entire inside and designed it for the 40 amp breaker, and so we optimized it perfectly for all the constraints in FRC. So like, its usable power is not that much different than the sim motor. Like, people think they're getting 300 plus watts out of that motor. You're not getting 300 plus watts out of that motor all the time. Not even close. Not even close. Yeah.
All right, so before we let Paul go and wrap up the show, we do want to pick a winner. We're actually going to pick two winners. This is a digital download that we'll send you. So we're going to pick two winners for this. So let's do the first one. Oh, look at that. Eugene from the Blue Alliance, subscriber since November 7th, or following since November 7th. So congratulations, Eugene. I am also Chemical Mace, who I think has actually won before. So both of you guys, great name, right?
I tried to re-enter and I wrote 50 Shades of Grey instead of black.
Oh. So both of you, Eugene, I got your contact info, but Chemical Mace, go ahead and shoot me a message and we'll get you that digital download shortly. And thanks to Christine Atia from Wordplay All Day. Go ahead and check out her Etsy shop. She got some really cool stuff coming out, so make sure you hit her up on Facebook as well.
Yeah, Paul, so we certainly, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It was extremely entertaining as always, and we'd love to have you back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. We should just do a craziness with Paul sometime or something like that. But it was great. Thanks for having me. It was great to be on the show. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
And make sure you guys go ahead, since Vex Pro is the first product, go ahead and check out their Facebook page and give that a like as well. So thank you to everybody who is helping make this show possible. If you want more First Robotics in your life and like what we do, hey, give us a follow on Facebook, on Twitch. Let other people know about what's going on so we can get an even bigger audience and get a bigger chat going as well. We love our chat room, and we thank everybody currently in the live chat right now for being part of the show. On behalf of myself, Mike, Justin, Christine, and Nick, I want to thank you for tuning in, and of course, thanks to Paul for sharing the incredible story that we went through today, and thank you to all of our moderators in chat. We'll see you next time on First Updates Now. Talk to you then.